Welcome to the Fundraising Streams panel. Hope you've been having fun today. I hope this session will freshen up your understanding of some various fundraising streams. We want to give you some examples from our organizations and inspire some excellent fundraising. So my name is Melissa Monforti. I'm the Executive Director at BookGive in Denver. We are one of the smaller organizations among our groups today. We donate adult and children's books, about 5,000 per month in Denver Metro. BookGive's budget is around $200,000, and we are a solo ED operation. So we are at that growing stage, excited about all this new information to help us. With me are three colleagues with a very wide-ranging experience in fundraising. No one person is an expert in anything, but we all have lots of great information to share. I'll let them introduce themselves, their organizations, budgets, number of employees, and then we'll jump into discussing various funding streams. So Kayla, would you start?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I am learning a lot and taking lots of notes. My name is Kayla Hand, and I'm the Executive Director of Books Between Kids in Houston, Texas. We have a staff of 5, 2 full-time, 3 part-time, a budget of about $500,000, and then we receive about $1.5 million in in-kind book donations per year, and we distribute about 300,000 books.
Thank you. Justin, you ready?
I am. I'm also thrilled to be here. Very excited to be part of the panel. My name is Justin Bray. I'm the Executive Director of Books for Keeps in Athens, Georgia. We are a staff of 5 full-time employees. We are currently hiring a 6th and 2 part-time seasonal to help us with our main book distribution programming this spring. Our budget is around $1.13 million, and we are distributing 200,000 books annually at this point. Yeah.
Thanks. And Mark.
My name is Mark Firing. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Book Bank. We've got an overall budget of just under $7 million when you include all the funny money, all the donated books. Otherwise, an operating budget of just under $700,000. We've got, let's see, 2 full-time and 6 part-time employees, and we distribute just under 500,000 books a year.
Sweet. Thank you all very much. I am dropping a link into the chat. This link is a place where you can take notes if you want. Note that it's a Google Doc, so if you want your own, go ahead and make a copy for yourself. Otherwise, we're all going to see your notes. It's just a list of funding streams, a place for you to kind of like just have a place to see what we're talking about today. So each of our panelists is going to share a little bit about these different funding streams. But just because one of them is talking about one funding stream, it doesn't mean they don't have experience in these other funding streams. So just know that lots of us have done a lot of things, as you have. We're just going to divvy them up so we can hear all the funding streams and have some examples. So let's start with you, Mark. Do you mind giving us a summary of your work with grants?
Or, first of all, I don't know how I got stuck into this one, but I'll take it. It was funny. What was my greatest fear when I first started in the nonprofit world was writing grants, because I didn't know how to do it because it is so particular to everyone. All of us here write. We all know that. We've all, had some participation in the whole funding process and the grant writing process. So my first little bit of advice always has been hire a professional. Get someone in there who really knows what they're doing. I got lucky and hired a woman who had she got PTSD from leaving a program that was not well managed by her board. And she was an exceptional writer. She had written for several politicians and other programs. And she was just starting out, recommended by another larger funder, larger grant writer rather. And she started out charging us only $75 an hour to do this work. And it was a gift. And she's grown with us, and we've grown because of her. It was such an amazing investment in both of our times. We've become good friends as well. She's just great at what she does, and I've referred so many other clients to her. But having someone who understood our programs from the inside, because she was running a literacy program, and then being able to speak to it, knowing very well all of the different types of studies that support the work that we're doing, made it a heck of a lot easier. So while I know that most of you already have this experience in mind, I'm not going to try, and I can just touch on a few little things, just some things that work for me and in working with the grant price process. Everybody knows that you're supposed to touch your funders, the grant, the foundations at least a few times a year. I literally will ask a foundation, how often do you want to hear from me? I don't want to be a pain in the rear end, and and just touch them. They're on our email list. So, and I know they're reading the emails that we're sending out, the news blasts and whatnot. They see us on social media. So I don't think it's necessary to constantly be inundating your funders with information unless something big happens. One of the key things that we realized that was available to us from foundations writing grants is that the management assistance grants. Those are smaller grants. In one case, we had $12,000. That will help you get started hiring that grant writer. It's key. It's a good grant. Yeah, if you get them from any foundation, there'll be plenty of them out there, I'm sure. Some of the things that we realize that we've been told recently, it's so important to include all of your in-kind in your budgets. So when you're talking to these foundations and you're writing grants, like I just said, you get an operating budget of 700,000, but your in-kind is 5 or 6. They want to see that whole thing. That's a major impact. So make sure that you're including that when you're writing up your budget. The corporate grants, this is a funny thing that when you have people volunteer for you, they will come in for, say, Care First. Next thing you know, you get a grant from them for $2,500 or whatever it is. Don't take that for granted. Those grants can segue into larger money. We're right now applying to Care First for a sponsorship for one of our events that we're doing. And we know that that's something that'll probably come in because they've got a lot of experience with us. So we don't take that for granted. We have other foundations that are coming in to volunteer with us. So that is my thinking is that they're just trying to get an inside view of how we work. They like what we do, and they want to see the other programs that are here.
Mark, I'm just going to stop you for 1 second, but did you all hear that had to do with grant funding, corporate relationships, volunteers, events? So obviously all of this stuff is so integrated. So keeping in mind that, we do have to connect those dots.
Right.
Thanks, Mark, go ahead.
If that is key, everybody's a funder, everybody's a potential funder, and you never know. I've had people come in here who are the spouses of people who work for another foundation. Next thing you know, I'm getting a call from that foundation saying, hey, my wife worked with you guys. She volunteered. Can you come in and talk to us? We'd love to support you. That's happened numerous times to us. It's really, I'm kind of like Forrest Gump, and it's just happened where people, you just keep talking about what you're doing and you never know who's going to be listening. I've had other friends who run a major program here that she was chatting with a woman in a cafe, and next thing you know, she had a check for $10,000. So you never know what's going to happen with that. But anyway, back to the grants. My last little bit of government grants. We jumped into that here in Baltimore. When you do that, you have to be prepared for the fact that you are going to have to keep strict records of every little thing that you do, every dime that you spend. So have those things put into place. It was such a mess here that the people we work with, the foundations we work with for that grant, that were the fiscal managers, learned more from us than we did from them. So you just have to be prepared with your bookkeeping and know that your financial committee and your bookkeepers, everybody in-house has to be prepared for keeping everything in minute detail and keeping it separate. We're looking at doing things on a more federal level, we hope. And in doing that, you have to make sure that your programs are separated out.
And here's where we're segueing from a lot of the information we heard this morning throughout the day already, but even just before with our CRM and data management, right? These is how it all integrates.
Yeah, all of that is key, especially when you're dealing with any sort of government grant. And then capital, we've gotten a lot of capital grants. We just got a new electric van, and that came from 2 capital funders. Simple to write, not too complicated, but still something that's important that you have those relationships already in place with the various foundations that you're working with or with the corporate funders. We have the corporate funding on our board. You need to make sure that the people that you're having, when I've had a lot of conversations with various programs about how you should build that board and looking at the various banks in your community, the various organizations that can possibly fund on that corporate level. You develop that relationship, and next thing you know, you've got $5,000 sponsorships coming in. You've got grants that you can write to those various banks. That's always good for about 25K, 30K a year for us, just in those smaller grants. And that's just people on our board saying, hey, we can get that 5K for you.
Thank you. And Mark, there's a question for you in the chat. I'll let you answer that in the chat while we move on. We're going to look into individual donors, including major donors. Kayla has some words of enlightenment there.
Of course. So our funding streams are pretty balanced now, but when we first started, we were run by our founders, our board, and an army of volunteers, which led us into being primarily funded by individual donors and also led to an event. So like Melissa was saying, it all feeds together. And what I have done is, because our organization is much like yours, I'm not going to tell you how to run an event, but I just compiled a few tips and tricks and observations from my time working with individuals in this field. First things first, I'm the only fundraiser on our staff. I'm also our executive director, so I wear many hats. And one of the things that has really helped me progress our fundraising is to stop taking on and off the fundraiser hat and to leave it on. So when I'm out at an event working a table, or I'm out with volunteers, those are all potential donors. And so I'm constantly looking for fundraising opportunities instead of just setting aside time to do that. The second thing is, fundraising is relationship based. And what I'm noticing with our individuals is those seeds take a little bit longer before you see results. And so I'm seeing volunteers from 2 years ago now starting to attend events. And so it is a long game. So don't be discouraged if you're not seeing results right away. Keep feeding into those potential donors. The next, and Mark mentioned this too, was corporate giving programs. But from an individual side, we work with organizations like Your Cause and Benevity. These are services that are free to nonprofits, and they encourage corporate giving, but through individuals. So payroll deductions, or perhaps their employer matches their personal donation. And so that's another way we get lots of individual donations. The next thing is, if you're going to be working with individual donors, I highly suggest you become well-versed in the rules of donor advised funds. We love donor advised funds, but they can be a little bit tricky. And so just knowing the ins and outs of them while you're talking to your individual donors, because we have everything from small grants to major gifts to people trying to use them for events. And so just knowing how those work is really helpful. And then Melissa asked me if we had any unique ways that we engage in the individuals. And I think the biggest unique way is that we work with one of our local television stations to put on, they do a big book drive and a telethon for us. So it started as some free publicity and then has now grown to a great source of funding and books, but also we're adding new names to our database every year, which leads me to the next thing is databases. Having clean data is really, really important for all these areas that we're talking about, but especially when I'm looking at individuals, having those relationships marked, which board members are friends with which donors so that they can write a thank you note and steward them. It really, really goes a long way. Okay, these next two. Your physical space. So I believe that the best way to steward or to capture an individual donor is to show them your mission in action. If you can't, I mean, obviously the first thing is try to get them out to a school or to see your program. And if you can't, to get them out to your warehouse or your space where all the book magic is happening. And then this is one thing we've really, really been focusing on at our organization is, how do your stakeholders feel when they walk into your organization? Do they feel proud of the space, or are they tripping over boxes? I know we're all working in warehouses and tight quarters, but what is the space saying about your mission? Are there photos of your kids on the wall? Are there donor recognition opportunities in your space? How does it make them feel? So that's one way that we really engage people, because I've noticed when I bring individual donors in, they say, whoa, we didn't know you were this big. And then it leads to the conversation of, we are and we need money.
Sweet, thanks, Kayla, so much. Justin, would you dive in with some things about earned income, see where we're at? And I think Mark has some things about earned income too. We'll hear from him as well. So Justin, go right ahead.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear more about, I told Mark in our meetings leading up to this panel that I'm super excited to hear more about his earned income structure, because it is super fascinating. But we are, I would say, fairly new to the earned income part of things. You know, Books for Keeps, when I inherited the organization a couple of years ago, and even before then, we were largely an individual donor led fundraising organization. It was a big chunk of our pie, but now we're pretty evenly spread across all the different pieces of the pie. But for earned income for us, a couple of years ago, we started doing book sales to schools and other partner organizations. And I've sort of advertised that as a book concierge service to those partners. And so what that looks like in practice is that they come to us with their budget, their headcounts, and the purpose of what it is they need to use those books for. And then we do what we do. We collect those books, we organize those books, process them in a way that is easy for our school partners and other partner organizations to sort of process on their own, and we deliver them to them. There is a small percentage cost above what it costs us to purchase those books, but a lot of times those books Because we largely purchase a lot of the books that we distribute to students across our region, we just sort of skim the book inventory off the top of those books that we're already purchasing. And it sort of works out that the more books we buy, the cheaper each of those books gets. And so it's a lot easier for us to get a little bit more each time we buy each of those titles, in anticipation of potentially having book sales pop up throughout the year, whether we're soliciting them or not. And so those have grown a lot, from 0 to last year we had a little under 120,000 in book sales, which was fantastic. It totally funded the position that we ended up creating to help support our operations manager in future years. And so we're very excited about that. That's a little bit of that. We also dabble in things like we sell a small bit of our space in our warehouse to a local partner, which doesn't bring in a whole lot of money, but it's just something I said, we have extra space, that's okay. My operations manager is on call and they would probably argue that it's not extra space. And so we eventually want to rent out our box truck because it's, we use it sporadically, but it would be a great resource to those that can't afford a box truck themselves. And also we like the idea of all of our things making money for us. We're also starting to sort of franchise our programming. In my mind, I'd really like for Athens, Georgia, where we're headquartered and founded, to be the place where we're able to continue to elevate our programming and make it better over years, and then bring future potential partners into Athens to see the programming and then work with them to bring it to their own local communities. And that partnership could be a way to continue funding what we're doing. So, in perpetuity is the idea. And of course, I just have a little bit here that just says consulting in all caps is what I put down here. I mean, I have, from the South, we're all full of quips. And my grandmother used to tell me that if there's something you're good at, then you shouldn't do it for free, which is rich coming from me because I'm a yes man as well. And I will help if somebody
Except
asks,
when you're here sharing your
Yeah.
information with all of us.
Exactly, yeah. But it's something that I've been talking to our mentor program director for a little while about how when we do start scaling that program, we should charge for that service. If we're going to help and be on retainer, so to speak, then we should charge some amount of money to help folks bring that program to their communities as well. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the nutshell, I would say, of earned income for us.
Thanks, and you, Mark?
Yeah, we've got, we do a similar what Justin's doing. We have memberships that we charge for larger organizations, and individual membership. It's $45 a year, so teachers can come in and get as many books as they want. They can load up. I've heard teachers literally come in their entire car and drive off a couple of times a year. We also have story kits that we developed during COVID. We're still now selling those to some of the tutoring programs rather than going out and getting funding. They're getting funding in partnership with us to pay for the program. So that's worked well for us. Of course, we have a book sale operation. So that's something that generates about $130,000 a year towards programming, provides a few jobs. It was a workforce development program. So that's been it's the thing that's been our bread and butter for years now. It's worked out really well for us. The other thing that we're in development with is we're getting 4 school buses, the short buses, and we are taking one of them. We're giving 3 others, the other 3 to 2 other programs. And we're going to create a rolling bookstore, which is a phenomenal way for us to get out, talk to people in the community, make some money, go to events. So it's a combination outreach / moneymaker, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody's really jazzed up about that here. Yeah, that's about it for us as far as the outside revenue things that we do.
Right. Yes. And all those outreach, it's all going to help bring more money in. Let's move on then to events. I personally have like a love-hate relationship with events. Kayla, what would you be able to share with us about events? Or did you already share all about events? No, you just did the other piece, but give us some more.
Sure. I will say events take a lot of time. So if you don't have a lot of staff capacity, events might not be the way to go. Although it is a great way to get your stakeholders involved. It's a great entry point into the organization. It's a great way to spread your mission in front of a large audience. And events have been part of our history for all 10 years. We've gone from 1 event a year to 2 events. One raises way more money than the other. So we call one a fundraiser and one is more of a friend raiser. So when we're talking about soliciting gifts, we're soliciting monetary gifts all year, but we're also soliciting in-kind gifts for our raffles and our bingo prizes and our silent auction items and all of that too. So we've built great relationships with our volunteers who might work in a place where they can donate an item. So events have a lot that go into them, but they end up being really fruitful for us.
Sweet. And of course, many of you have done events at small, large, whatever, and we all know return on investment. Oh God, right? Maybe that's why I have that love-hate relationship. So we're down to just a couple more funding streams to just make sure we touch base on. One of them is corporate sponsors and partners. I do have one really quick thing to share from BookGive around this. So BookGive is funded in part by a bookstore that we are affiliated with. So it's an independent bookstore that donates 10% of its book sales to us every month. That has been a great source of income for us at times. So it's unfortunately not as consistent because independent bookstores are not $1 million entities. So, but it is a corporate sponsorship that has been supportive, and it's also a great way for us to, just connect with their customer base. So that's one to share. And I think Justin and Mark have some things they might want to give us there. Mark, do you want to start?
Justin, you take that?
Oh, Justin, you're on. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, so speaking of corporate sponsorships and how we sort of engage with our business community, starting first and foremost, we've been part of our Chamber of Commerce for the past 5 or 6 years, I believe. And that's been a huge boon for us. It's a pretty low fee for entry, and then we are listed in their database. It's easy to find us on there. It was sort of the first step into building that relationship with our corporate community. And so I sort of have a philosophy. We look at corporations and businesses and local partners as individual donors as well themselves. And so, speaking with them and making sure that you're learning what their motivations are, what it is they want to see, and then tying their motivations for running their businesses and what it is they do into specific things that are specific actionable, inroads to your mission is really helpful for us. And so, yeah, working with the Chamber of Commerce has been really big. Local community foundation has been really big, demonstrating to those businesses the benefits of collaborating with one another. We talk a lot about workforce development, and that literacy and literacy access is a huge key to future workforce development. And it's pretty exciting right now that the last 5 to 6 years of us working with our Chamber of Commerce and local business partners, we've actually seen a huge transition now into, we're currently in a pretty unique situation where we're working really closely with a local brewery who has completely funded our pilot program, our pilot mentor program, and identified literacy growth as their next 5-year, multi-year funding pledge. And so they have sort of taken on a big role in this relationship of continuing to speak to other corporations and businesses to show them that it's not impossible for a business to get involved with nonprofits and in a cause like this. And it's very exciting to kind of work with them and allow us to continue doing the work while they are sort of doing that work of sort of tapping additional fundraising and additional funds for future sustainability, which is really great. In other ways, we also work with group opportunities for offices, organizations, social groups. But then I'm seeing people in the chat talk about how they charge corporations for volunteering. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was an option. So, so I would love to hear more about that at some point. I'll also say that one thing that we've done in the past and has worked really well for us is that we had an annual signature event, and we still do, that had sort of transitioned over the last couple of years. It was originally our book sale that we turned into our book fair, and the biggest change for that occurred was that we went from a pay-to-play model to donation-based, donate what you can. And so with that change and people coming in and getting books, we asked businesses in the community that if we could continue doing this, they would help us to keep it free for the public. And with that ask and with the solicitation of sponsorships, we were able to almost double our business contributions over the years since we started doing that. We did that in 2020 for the first time because we had so many books, and people were sitting in front of all their books and not wanting to look at them anymore, and so they wanted to donate them. And we were afraid we weren't going to get rid of them. We were just going to keep sitting on them. It's going to get worse and worse. And so we said, let's just ask people to come get them, and we'll ask business partners to help make sure we don't lose money. And we were very pleasantly surprised that with very little effort at that time, we were able to recoup all those losses of funding for that. And then following years, we actually tried to just solicit sponsorships, and it worked tremendously.
Good. Yeah, for us, we have the relationship with the Ravens. And, you know, it was one of those things where every team, every sports team in your area has a foundation. They're all, and the players have foundations. And literacy is something that speaks to a lot of them who have children, and they want to be involved in the community, and they want to have their name on things. And the Ravens were one of them. We got lucky. I know that in DC, it's not the case. So we're trying to look at ways we can expand that relationship. They've become funders for us. That are going to be giving us $25,000 a year for the next 5 years. And that allows them to keep their name on the bookmobiles, and we're out in the community. They love that we're heading down into various counties, which by law, they can't go by the league rules. They can't go into like DC. So we'll be right in the heart of DC with the bookmobiles. Another thing that we're doing is this new van we have, it's electric. BG&E was in the warehouse volunteering, and we talked to them about, would you guys like to sponsor the van? So they'll put their logo on it. We'll charge them a certain amount of money each year, and they'll sponsor the van. So looking at some of those larger entities that you're working with already, not being afraid to ask is a big thing. Also utilizing the communications we're doing here. I've hooked up other people with some other teams, you know, the person they should be dealing with through my connection with the Ravens. You never know what's going to happen. One of the organizations that's here in the warehouse deals just with sports equipment, and they, you know, have relationships all over Buffalo. They just got a $600,000 check from a guy up in Buffalo to start their program up there. They're in Philadelphia, so they're hooked in with the Eagles, working with them. But the point is that everybody's got kids. It's not just, you know, a team or a corporation. They all have kids, and they all like what we do, and they want to be involved. And Justin, just so you know, there's an organization in my warehouse. All they do is charge volunteers, corporate volunteers, to come in $100 a head. And during COVID, we were sending them book kits to put together at home, $100 a head. So there's a lot of money to be made out there through that type of, you know, they want your PR. They want to be able to say they work with you, and they're going to put that all over their social media. It looks good, and it doesn't cost them much at all, but it's very helpful to us. So.
Perfect. And thank you for that dollar amount, Mark, because a couple of questions did come up in the chat. So there's an example of a per head count for how much to charge. And of course, it's going to be scalable based on what kind of organization you have and what exactly people are doing. But it's definitely a way. If you're letting corporations come and volunteer for free, you're leaving money on the table for sure. I think we're almost done here. So I think the last thing, finally, and that is a pun intended, we're not going to forget about planned giving and endowment. Mark has been working on preparing an endowment for Maryland Book Bank, and that would be great information. And then if any of our other panelists have some information about planned giving they want to share, they can do that. We heard a little bit about donor advised funds, but more about the planned giving for end of life chain donations, etc. So endowment, go Mark.
This is all new to me. And I have a colleague who runs a diaper program, Share Baby. They work with a national diaper network. Because of her board, she decided to set up an endowment. She was told to do that, $1.2 million inside of the first year. There's a trick to this, and I'm learning it. She's learning it. She had no idea this was even available as far as foundations go. When you're writing your grant, put in there, we'd like you to consider an extra 20% for our endowment. It's something that's standard practice. And, you know, if anybody's got anything else they want to add, please do. Because like I said, this is all new to me. The first thing that she said you need to do is set up some sort of your purpose. Why are you raising this money? Why do you want this endowment? And for us, it's going to be to keep a roof over our head. Then create, you know, some sort of a legacy. We call it the legacy of literacy. So it's going to be, when you talk to your funders, those big funders, you can say to them, this is going to be your legacy. You're going to put this money in here. We're going to name that particular part of the fund after you. You're going to be on this list of people that's helped us create the permanence of literacy for these children. The other thing that they were saying is you need to have your agreement and your stipulations. What exactly are you going to do? What is the purpose of this? What are you going to do to manage this money? Who's going to be in charge? There needs to be a separate committee. There are organizations within banks and within foundations that will help you. As I've started just recently, literally within the last 3 months, started talking to foundations about this, all of them were like, oh, good. It was almost like they were relieved to finally hear that we were doing this. But it's funny how they won't share it. They won't say to you, hey, have you thought about an endowment? Have you thought about starting to do this? Because you've been around for a little while now. What's the next step? So they kind of leave it out there for you to figure out. So that's going to be the next phase for us. Is there's a couple of foundation people that I want to talk to, just because I have that kind of a relationship with them. So I'd recommend that you do the same. Is finding someone that you have a very good relationship with, particularly in a bigger foundation that can help you along with this. We have several, so it's going to help us out quite a bit. I'm trying to see. We're going to have a goal of 1.5 million. We want to raise $60,000 a year off of that endowment. So that's going to be our first goal. And then you send them a gift. Whoever's giving you money. This is all coming from a fundraising guru. She's amazing at what she does, but she's good with the cards. She's good with the gift afterward, and just following up. As I learn more, I'll tell you. But like I said, this is all new to me, and the plan giving part is something I'm completely clueless about. I'm just talking to some of my older donors now and talking to some of the board members about how do we start having that conversation with them and making it something permanent, and looking at what sort of support they might give to us in their wills. It might be a hard conversation to have, and but it's necessary if you're gonna have that long-term, success. That's all I had.
Melissa, I can speak a little bit on
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
thank you. Go right ahead.
So there are nonprofits that have huge development staffs, and they have a specific person just for planned giving, and that person's able to advise their donors and have really in-depth conversations. But you don't have to have a super advanced knowledge in order to be able to encourage your donors in planned giving. So you have to know what kind of gifts you would accept, that you would like a copy of their will if they'll be able to provide it. And then you really steward them like a regular donor, but you're encouraging them to have those conversations with their estate lawyer, whoever's putting together their will, so that you are included in the proper ways. So I just want to encourage you that it doesn't have to be super complicated in order to start those planned giving conversations, although it can be intimidating. But a lot of people will approach and ask about it if you're open to those conversations and bring it up naturally.
Right, and as we are stewarding donors from the beginning, just making sure that planned giving is something that shows up in your newsletters and other things all the time, so that even a donor who is, certainly, not near the end of their life, but they are ready to think about those things, and you're planting that seed all along. So that is definitely something I've been advised, and it's, that's how donors start. They start to come to me, be like, I've been thinking about this. So. But again, you're right. You don't have to have that extra skill set as long as you're bringing the conversations up. That is all the funding streams that we were going to just kind of bring up today. And now we're going to move into some other aspects of conversation about funding streams and how we're taking care of our donors, et cetera, and funders. So engaging with our funders is kind of our next little area. And engagement obviously has all these different levels. It is a wide spectrum. And so we're going to all talk about how we are engaging with our donors. Remembering panelists, we're just going to add to the conversation. So if you already do some of the things that we've been mentioning, add more to that. And Kayla's going to start us off, if you don't mind. Tell us, what are your main ways that you're engaging with donors?
Sure. So I already mentioned bringing them on tours and to see our mission in action. We also have some new logo recognition opportunity in our warehouses for our bigger donors, and they've responded really positively to that. We also encourage them to come volunteer. And then one thing that I think is very important is funders like to be able to help. If they're already supporting your organization, they want to be able to help you in any way you can. And so often our funders connect us to other community partners who we give books to. And so just making them feel like they're part of that process and part of making your mission happen.
Awesome, thanks. Justin, you have something to share there with your engagement with your funders?
Yeah, again, the quips. I love a quip. And so, distilling down to, there's 3 ways that we try to three sort of focus areas that we try to focus on when we're speaking with people that are either already donors or could be donors. And those three things are, making sure that they we interact with them in a way that makes them want to talk about Books for Keeps often. We interact with them in a way that makes them want to show up for Books for Keeps often in person and volunteering, and we interact with them in a way that encourages them to donate in a way that's personally meaningful to them. And so those three things, we try to get 2 of the 3, and we feel like that's a success. And so, yeah, talk about a show up for us, give meaningfully. Exactly.
Thanks. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, we're similar in that we try to keep everyone as involved as possible in the volunteering process. We want them here, consistently seeing the work they're doing. We are sure to send out, the social media part of what we do is always showing the kids and showing the results of what we're doing. So they see that, the quarterly emails, et cetera. But then there's that personal touch where, for some of our larger donors, they're older, they will come to Books for Kids Day, which is a big event that we have every year. That's been around for maybe over 20 years now, because it was before we were even the Maryland Book Bank, when we used to be just the Baltimore Reads Book Bank. So it's one of those things that they expect to see each year, and that will get them involved in as well, and see some of the corporate involvement, see some of the younger people who are involved with us. So we definitely do that touch. And then, of course, there's always, the quick note of thanks, when they get their donations in, and even when they don't. We've had some people call us and say this year they couldn't, it was a bad year for them. So, and that was one person in particular, we just, still sent them that thank you note for your support. We know you're out there for us. That's still important. We took a good look at who couldn't give or who didn't, or whether it went down, and we pursued them again with that personal touch to say, hey, we miss you, can you come back in? So that kind of thing, just keeping us in their mindset is important, for the individual. Same thing with the foundation, but to a lesser degree. They're like I said before, they see all the social media, the emails, and the reports that we send them, and the personal touch, just reaching out to the foundation heads every once in a while.
Thank you. And so much of this also is relating to some of the stuff we talked about today about, keeping our data clean, and, so easy to pull a report that says, let me reach out to donors who haven't given this year, and give them a special email and that. So, and I'll just share that with BookGive, we're still very small, so we can literally send a handwritten note to every single donor, and that is, like Kayla was mentioning, when she first started, it was very heavy on individual donors. That's kind of where BookGive is right now. So diversifying that income is important, but while we're small, hey, we're going to take amazing care of our donors. And the other thing I want to share is that we are really kind of religious about being consistent. So our newsletter goes out on the 1st. It is never on the 2nd. It's on the 1st, because we want to make sure that we're building credibility, especially as we're small. And of course, this would also happen anytime there's a transition in leadership or something like that, where you just want to make sure the people who are supporting you know that the organization is solid. And so having that consistency is super important. And also, when a donation comes in, it is within 24 hours, they're getting all the things, that we do with our donors, with thank yous, et cetera. So that consistency is an important piece of connection. Kayla, did you unmute to say?
Well, what I've noticed is most of those individuals who started with us in the beginning when we were small have now become our bigger donors, because they feel like they are part of building your organization. So,
well, because you've done your job really, really well. Yay, Kayla. But yeah,
it wasn't me, it was everyone who laid the path before me. But that's how you build your donor base and increase donor amounts, and you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. And that consistency is super important. And so there's another piece of this before we start to ask for questions from all of you. And that is board and staff are generally, part of the fundraising mechanism. And I'm asking all of you to just mention, how are you engaging your board, and if you have staff in fundraising, whether they're fundraisers or not, to do this giant task of making sure we all get paid and have things to offer. So go right ahead, Mark. You want to get us started on that?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. My board has been amazing. We have a give get, of course, of $1,000, but a lot of those people, as I said before, are corporate. So because of that, the sponsorships have come easier for, say, Books for Kids Day. Some of the bank relationships we had came in. So my board is very involved. It's a little on the big side right now at 14. We're going to be paring that down as some people came off because we want it to be a good bit smaller. I'd rather have it be around 9 or 10. But keeping them involved constantly, not constantly, but at least we meet every other month. So on that off month, there are committee meetings, but there's also an email just to fill them in on what's going on and keeping them involved. The email specifically to those people who can provide a certain, amount of knowledge. They get really excited when they know that, they're helping out as an individual too, not just as the massive board. And them, they have a funny way of reaching out to me for something that's going on at their corporate event. If they're doing something, it's like, hey, come in and see this speaker or meet this person. So it's been really, for us, a great relationship. And, my board accounted for about $30,000 in funding last year. And that's not counting what, was down the pike. I was shocked when I saw the numbers, but and old board members too, board members that had stepped off, who are still following us on Instagram and getting those emails. They're sending in $1,000 too. That was surprising. One of them in particular hadn't engaged since we left Baltimore Reed. So it had been 10 years. And this is the first year he sent us a check for $1,000. So we're hoping that'll segue into more. And he lives out in Texas. So you never know what's going to happen there either. But, it's a very important relationship to maintain. And that's paramount to me more than anything else, is keeping them going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Justin, you have anything about your board or staff that you want to add to this?
Yeah, we do have a great board as well. I'm very excited about our board and kind of where we're headed. But one thing that kind of comes to mind when talking about this is we incorporate that piece that I just shared a moment ago about giving in a way that's personally meaningful to you, so that we can say that our board gives 100% of our board gives each year to our annual year-end giving. And we're also very lucky that because that's sort of the culture that we've created, that we can also say that 100% of our previous board members are also still giving to the mission. And so even the ones that have rolled off, we can say in communications that 100% of current and former board members are still giving to the annual year-end giving campaign. And then we make that a board match if it's something significant. And we've been lucky enough for the last couple of years that it has been fairly significant to where it has motivated other people to join in the giving. And because we are getting a little bit older and more people are rolling off, that board match will, in theory, continue to get larger each year. So we hope. And so we've been very lucky for that. And most of our board, they are all folks that have participated in like local leadership groups and social organizations and things like that. So their networks are much larger than any of our own. And so those folks are people that champion us at all of those events, and they get excited about what we have going on. And we've experimented with a lot of different ways to keep them engaged. We actually just changed to a similar structure that Mark just mentioned about month on, month off for committee meetings, and keeping them engaged in between has been challenging, but we try to keep up with emails, or it's really easy to do podcasts these days for your board. It's something that I did last quarter and I didn't pick up again this quarter, but not because it didn't work. It was just because of life. So, but it was really engaging and very easy for them to pop it in and listen to a quick 10-minute podcast instead of me sending an email that would take me 10 to 20 minutes to do. So you can just do it with your phone. So it's really easy.
Nice.
What a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have an events committee. It is made up of half board members, half either former board members or stakeholders who have been really involved. And a fun fact, it used to be called the fundraising committee, and nobody wanted to do anything. As soon as we just renamed it the events committee, we got more engagement. So, it is what it is. But one of the things I think about when I think about both my board and my staff is that they're the spokespeople for our organization, and they're really helping shape the culture. So my staff are boots on the ground in there with the volunteers, and while they might not be direct fundraising, they definitely answer questions about fundraising and point them to the right direction. And they're really creating the culture that those future donors are they have happy feelings about the organization. So they're really helping shape that.
Sweet. Thank you. I appreciate all that. And right before we go to some questions, the last thing that we would like to share with you is sort of a resource roundup. So we are not as cool as the other team that had the wacky whiteboard craziness, but we have we have some we do all have, you know, resources that are our favorites, and we're just going to all share a couple that we love. I'll start with just a few that have really helped me. For donor development, I have followed Jess Campbell from Out in the Boons. Jess is very active on Instagram, but I actually very much recommend you getting on her email list because she sends a lot of free content that's super, super helpful. And she also puts together a one-day fundraising. It's called Fundraising More Together. And I had just recently increased my monthly donors by 57% using a method that she shared with me. So bingo, sold. And then for email marketing, I learned most of what I learned about email marketing and being clear with my copy and my messaging from Marie Forleo. So she has tons of free content, amazing YouTube channel. She's a master marketer. So that's just another resource that I've really enjoyed following. And then I use Loom, Loom. Loom is a video emailing app, and I use that to do personalized thank yous to donors with, of course, lots of books behind me or other cool things to just be like, we love you. Thank you so much for your donation. And it's something I can do directly. Thank you, Kellyanne. And finally, as a smaller organization that is yet to move into CRMs, I'm not sure how many of us are still small, but I use Gmail Mail Merge. It's like my favorite friend in the universe to be able to do personalized emails. So if you haven't used a mail merge from Gmail, that is a very useful tool. Those are some of the resources I have to share, and I will pass it along. Let's go. Let's in the order of my screen. It'll be Justin, Mark, and then Kayla. Let's hear what you've got.
Yeah, in the last session, they also mentioned Asana. We do use Asana. We use it for a lot of different purposes, but the purposes that I think we've used it for the most that have been the most useful, one of those things are one-to-one check-ins for staff, but the thing that is more relevant to what we're talking about right now is for grant management. Super customizable, very easy. It feeds into any other apps that you're probably using to help manage all your grants. I'm somebody that has ADHD, and I'm going to forget it if it's not written down somewhere, or if there's not an alarm somewhere for me. And so that feeds right into calendars, tells me when certain check-ins for grants are happening, or deadlines for grants, or when I should be working on a grant before the deadline. And so that's been really helpful. Grant Gopher, another great website that is free up to a certain point. Great place to find grants. I mentioned a second ago podcasts. If that perked anyone's interest, I'm happy to talk about it. I love podcasts. I've been a podcast consultant, and I've run my own podcast for the last 7 years. But one thing that's really useful for anybody that wants to get into it is Anchor. And Anchor is a software that is just an app. You can upload it onto your phone. And if you have an iPhone or any of the phones that have been made in the last couple of years, you can make a pretty fantastic sounding podcast with little to no effort. So you can load it straight from your phone onto Anchor. And Anchor has a lot of really great little things that you can add to it, like sound effects or transitions. And it uploads into all of the places where you get your podcasts. So I've recorded from my desk right here. I've recorded in the car. If you look up the Books for Keeps podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Play, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all those places, and you can kind of see like the little effort that I put into it, but it's got good information for our board and staff.
Actually, I just read an article recently that said people are much more excited to watch a video or hear a podcast that's a little homemade. So,
yeah, exactly.
bingo. There you go.
More relatable.
Excellent, right? Go ahead, Mark. What do you got for? Looks like you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I don't have much along the grant side as far as resources go. I've got Sarah handling all of that. She's amazing. So it's the constant communication with her and writing thing. My resource as far as what I do here, and I've said this before, if I wrote it down somewhere and I didn't, My Thriving Nonprofit. It's a Facebook group, and it's the best thing ever if you have any questions about anything. It's all people like us who are running programs or involved in programs. And if you have any kind of a question at all, you can put it out there. And that comes right down to grant writing. You'll see people who are with big organizations, small organizations, and it's wonderful because you'll get people that are vested in helping other nonprofits succeed and giving their honest opinions. And you can have the ED of a multi-million-dollar company giving you advice, and then you can have somebody who's small, but hey, I just did this and it worked for me kind of thing. So it's kind of fun. And of course, Nonprofit Leadership Lab has a myriad resources for anything coming from grant writing to fundraising and volunteer management, all of it, HR. So those are really the two things that I tap into pretty often.
Awesome. And we're also going to have this amazing association of book provision organizations. That's going to be our awesome set of buddies in the field for sure. So that's you know, those are great resources. Lots of those were flying through the chat. Thank you, Kellyanne, for finding lots of those links. I threw some in there too. Panelists, if you see anything that you want to add in there, you can. And so for our last couple minutes, if you have a question you would like to voice, feel free to unmute yourself and share, ask, slash, if there was something in the chat that you saw that you're like, hey, that didn't quite get addressed, I have some input to share. Please bring that up now. We're happy to field a few questions.
So, excuse me, I know a lot of people are interested to hear about volunteering and how to monetize that. Kelly or Rebecca, if you want to talk about how you've been able to incur some income through volunteering.
So my idea is slightly different than Rebecca's, because I actually want to know. Rebecca's going to send me a one-pager on what she's doing. We've talked about it for years. You know, how do you monetize those volunteer opportunities without turning volunteers off? But it also gives volunteers, you know, skin in the game. What we've just now started doing though is we actually have volunteer projects that are building projects. So volunteers can build bookshelves for us for our reading resource centers, and volunteers can also help us build our very large free little libraries. They're pretty complicated. It's just a lot of work. So we rent tools and all those kind of things. So we've actually just started partnering with an organization called She Built the City, which promotes trade with amongst women and young girls. And so they're actually going to start hosting us at their workshop because they have all the tools. So we're going to turn it into a volunteer package where, you know, for X amount of dollars, you know, a volunteer group of up to 10 people can come in and actually do these physical builds with 2 collaborating nonprofits. So we're going to make sure that our time is paid for, their time is paid for, and obviously all the materials are paid for. But we're turning it into like a kind of a small sponsorship. So it's really for the more complicated projects or the larger groups. Because I don't know how I know Mark's got a lot more room than some of us, but and Justin, I know your space is actually fairly large, but you know, you get these, like we have 100 volunteers, can we come in? And it's like, we don't have enough room for our staff, you know, like we know. So starting to charge folks for project management, like we just, you know, we say, do you have a budget? You know, this is what it will cost. And then here are the material costs as well. So roll it up into like a volunteer sponsorship. So I'll stop talking so that Rebecca can talk about hers.
Yeah, so I was on a DSNY, a Department of Sanitation call last February, and they were talking about revenue streams, and they said corporate volunteering, and we were like, what is that? And they were like, if you're not doing that, you're missing out. Corporations have budgets. They're writing, you know, they're largely writing off these days. They're paying their employee. And so our analysis was, we need volunteers. We're super excited to get corporate volunteers, and also we should be taking advantage of this. So we developed kind of a pricing structure based on the number of people coming in, and then based on like a 3-hour shift. So the more people coming in, the higher the price. And, you know, if folks say they don't have a budget, we encourage them to sign up just for like a calendar spot, you know, and sign up with your 5 of your friends, but then we're not going to sort of close our book hub for their group. Typically, you know, a corporate group kind of they might want their own thing. I saw in the chat, I think it was Melissa maybe said something about also charging for space use for a meeting afterwards, or things like that. I think we did that one time. But yeah, really thinking about this, the corporation, they want to serve and we need their time and their money. So it's been, yeah, we implemented it sometime last spring. And people have really been open to it. What we also say is like, here's our fees. If you can give more, that would be great too.
Always ask for more. Gotta ask for more. Exactly. Thanks, Rebecca and Kelly. Thank you so much for those that input. And obviously there's more to be shared about that. And I see some hands are up. I didn't see the first name of Village of Moms, but would love to hear from you if you want to see if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hi, my name is Alicia Gill. I am CEO and co-founder of Village of Mom at TL. I'm located in St. Louis. We are a community based organization. We're not a 501c3, and so we do a lot of our work is volunteer based. We work with a lot of parents, caregivers who are very dedicated to making sure that marginalized kiddos are receiving books, because many of the marginalized kids that we serve are not even close to a library. And so many of them are having their own library at home so that they do not miss out on that wonderful experience of being at a library, right? And so
Thank you.
well, some of the challenges we find is getting donations because we're not a 501c3. And so one of the things that we we're lucky to do is collaborate with other organizations that are 501c3 and that are able to, but the problem is that many of them are dependent on donation and grants as well. So my question for anyone, how could someone who is a grassroots organization be able to get books or book donation without having a 501c3, if that makes sense?
I'm going to ask if there's anyone who's a book provision organization in the St. Louis area to make sure they connect with Village for Moms, and so that we are making sure that you're getting that connection, because there are other, book provision organizations here that would be able to support that. And at least Book Give and other organizations have like a book request forms on their websites, and that might be another way to connect. But we're going to run out of time to get all of those questions, all of that addressed. So I would definitely encourage you to stay connected with this group so that we can continue to support what you're doing. And then we're just about at time. Lisa, I did see that you have your hand up. Is it a quick question, something we can address, or do you want to put it out into the world and we'll see if someone can follow up with you if we run out of time?
Yeah, that would be great. My name's Lisa Hub, of course. I run Spread the Word Nevada. Allie was on earlier talking about our Readers in Training program. We're quite large in Vegas, and we've been around 22 years, so we're pretty established. And this has been very interesting to me to tune in and out today and still learn, even after 22 years, still learn. My question is, if anybody else, we're having a lot of corporate people coming to us wanting access to our kids or our families, and like putting flyers in the distributions and so forth like that. And I'm just curious, obviously we're checking and making sure it's good stuff, and we're gonna, obviously make sure we're not putting anything crappy out to our families. But I was just curious what people are charging for that, or because it is a fundraising mechanism as well. If they want, there's money there to be had if they're trying to get access to our kids. So if anybody's doing that or have put a price tag like that, I'd be very curious, because it just seems like that's been happening a lot for us lately. And I'm not sure if I'm under or over or whatever charging. So I'd be interested.
Right on. So anyone who has an answer to that question, can you connect with Lisa in the chat and make sure that she has some resources to follow up with? And then, of course, the last thing I want to say is that we did all get access to that giant database of information. So especially for our last question, et cetera, if you want to make sure you're looking for the organizations that are in your area. And the other last piece of advice I'd have is to get on each other's emailing lists. Again, going back to that big database, this is where you're going to see how other organizations are doing their asking and are connecting with their donors, connecting with their stakeholders. And it's great to just kind of like see how everyone's doing their job. I want to thank our panelists so much for giving us all your information, Justin, Mark, and Kayla. Thank you very much for all of your expertise today, and enjoy the rest of the days on this. We did it. We're almost there.